If you've decided to start growing your family, firstly, congratulations. Being a new parent is an incredibly exciting time. It's hard to think of a bigger, more important, more impactful decision a person can make. It'll change everything, including, you guessed it, your finances. So if you've made the decision to have children, how can you make sure you're in the best possible position to enjoy your new baby without the money stress? That's today on Money and a Good Life. There's so much to do when you've got a baby on the way. It's easy to overlook the money stuff. But today, we're going to make it easy for you to make sure you're ticking the right boxes and won't be caught unprepared. My name's Stephanie Coombs, and I'm here with my co-host, money expert Ryan Watson, and we're going to go through this one together. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Steph. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, Ryan, picture this. Someone's made the decision to have children. When is it a good time to take stock of their finances?
Best answer is sooner rather than later. So coming from a place of understanding assets, liabilities, income, and then household expenditure, status quo, understanding it, and then planning for what might be or what will be the financial impacts, whether it's going to one salary, childcare and the like as well.
So you can never start too soon.
You can never start too soon because the stats tell us that having a child will cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million over the first 18 years.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
That's a very nice car.
It's a great car.
But a car can't love you back, I guess. So, well, but anyway, let's first of all talk about leave entitlements. Most people will know whether or not they qualify for parental leave, let's hope. You know that much about your workplace. But are there other schemes that they should be looking into?
Yeah, the government paid parental leave is something that people should look into. It's basically 6 months' pay on minimum wage. So without getting into the technical today, it is means tested, but a vast majority of people would qualify for that. Post looking at that, I'd look at leave entitlements from your employer as well. So generally they go from a month to up to 6 months at some big corporates with 6 months leave, full pay.
Something a car can't give you.
It certainly can't. No
one's going to give me 6 months off so I can just drive around in my nice new car. So we'll put that one tick in the baby column.
Unfortunately not.
When it comes to leave entitlements, you're not always going to necessarily be on the same money that you've been on. There will probably be some adjustments on your salary. Do most people get taken by surprise that they've got a baby which costs a lot of money and their money comes down? Has that caused tension in people that you've dealt with?
Yeah, it absolutely can cause tension. The key word that comes to mind and why looking at your finances sooner rather than later, the key word is around compromise. So in a society where we like to have everything in the here and now, planning for a baby, financial and otherwise, means that there are going to be some compromises. Like I think of the last 12 months, there's 5 children within the tribe at Tribeca. So we've had conversations real world around this, around paternity leave and who's going to take some time off, what were the financial effects to the house. And, some of our advisors have said they've just started reining in some of their cash flow ahead of time, whether it's around holidays, dinners out and the like as well. Also, for people who have a mortgage and they might be making extra payments, it might be a time where you go to interest only and you really cash flow manage that across the first 12 to 24 months. But you're making conscious decisions around a household and where you want to go because, you're bringing a new human into the world.
And those 12 months, especially the first 12 months, you really want to be there and you really want to be present. You've created something beautiful and exciting. It's a shame that you try and rush through that period so you can go back to paying down your mortgage. Like you're not having to set a financial strategy in stone and you can never adjust it. There's always time to pull levers and make things more comfortable.
Yeah, there's and with understanding about your current financial situation, there's always different choices you can make. I've got he's okay with this, but I know our head of advice heads off on paternity leave on Friday for 3 months. And
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And he sent a note to all of our clients a couple of weeks ago and he got some really good responses. And when he came to me and, asked about this as a possibility, it was always a yes from me, and also understanding why it's really important to him as well. His partner's taken the first 6 months off and Rob will take the next 3 months. And what a great opportunity. But in doing that, he's had to look at, what's the financial compromise as well.
Like everything in life, I think it's pretty easy to get caught up with what other people are doing and spending when it comes to kids. Do you see people getting caught in the spending trap when it comes to children?
We're big, and we've discussed it on this podcast before, Steph, around whether you're keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the Kardashians. We're massive on people running their own race with understanding around what that family unit wants. That's really important. What's important to them? How much time do they want off? Then we can look at financial compromise or financial strategies that can enable people to have that as well. And it is, a 6 to 12 month period per child. It can be longer. Depends what the family unit wants.
And when it comes to buying new things for a baby, I mean, there's so many things and purchases and it can really start to build up. Yeah. So not only is your earning potential sometimes a bit limited for a while, but you've got all these other big expenses that start coming in.
Yeah, I talked earlier about, the babies that I suppose, in inverted commas, Tribeca's having.
Like a collective.
Exactly, and, talk amongst our advisors. And two key things that I loved, the power of the grandparents, what they will and won't buy, cots and the like as well. So in terms of engaging grandparents into the process. Also a nice one that I liked as well was around Facebook Marketplace with the added bonus that one of the partners doesn't have to put the furniture together. So no flat packs, it's already done. As one of our advisors said in a team meeting yesterday, the other dad's already done it.
Even better. Now, we've talked about this a little bit already, but let's go back into cash flow. I know that we love cash flow here. How important is it to really get control of your cash flow as a new parent?
Yeah, so we often talk about people either being in charge of their own cash flow or it being in charge of them. And the basis for that is understanding what you're spending and then creating some conscious cash flow structures or putting yourself back in charge of it as well. So with understanding, we know we can dial down a lot of anxiety when it comes to cash flow, and you can do some planning. We see a lot of people who don't consciously know how much even they earn, let alone what they spend. By putting a few steps in place and some key structures, they can then be empowered to understand what they earn, understand what they spend, and really enjoy a fun and fabulous time in people's lives.
And I think that getting control of your cash flow doesn't actually necessarily start when you have your new baby. Ideally, it starts again sooner than that, earlier than that. You talked about that, reining in maybe expenses before you have your child so you can have the cash saved up for when you might need it.
Yeah, exactly right. And, on the subject of, children and like, I know, with our teenager at home, when we first went overseas when she was 6 years old, we've put a plan in place where we encourage her, any money she's gifted, that she saves even 50 to 75% from the trip. So with children from a young age, trying to create the right financial habits as well.
Yeah, so if you have a child, you've already started your good money habits and then you bring that into the family and that hopefully will go on for generations to come. I think that's a nice thing. It's never too early, I think, to actually really sort of have open discussions about money.
Yeah, and establishing the true value of money without going on any tangent. It's just so easy to tap and pay these days. We don't really have a lot of cash in our hands. So, and for children who haven't obviously necessarily earned the money, but if you can help teach them the value of money.
Do you think that people underestimate just how much it costs to have a child?
Oh, absolutely. You know, so one is what's the change to income in a household? Is that a change over 3, 6, 9 or 12 months, including maternity or paternity leave? And then beyond that, I was only reminded the other day around the cost of childcare, which averages $150 to $190 a day, depending on where you live. That's a phenomenal expense. And not everyone qualifies for subsidies. So to go to work or have one partner go to work, one stay at home, that's a significant cost. And it once again, it talks to trade-off conversations as well.
And obviously we've talked about the things that you have to buy, but there's also medical appointments. A lot of medical appointments pop up.
That's it. The obstetrician, the hospital, there's a lot of what we call plus. There's a lot of associated expenses as well. So on the income side and then the expense side as well.
So hopefully you've taken the time to sort of work out exactly what you'll spend and I'm sure there'll be some surprises. Hopefully you've actually prepared for that and sorted out your cash flow nice and soon. But if you find yourself as a new parent and you have actually your budget's just not working out and it's much harder than it should be and you maybe haven't prepared as much as you thought. I'm sure there are so many people who feel financially overwhelmed as well as sleep deprived. As well as the responsibility. What do you do if you find yourself in that situation?
In a very positive sense, it's got to be a day-to-day or week-to-week proposition. Of times of sleep deprivation and when things are really hard, it's really not the time to have a hard financial conversation with yourself. It's really a survival or get through based conversation. So in that instance, if you're practically spending more than you earn and you can't do a lot about it, then there's the opportunity potentially, if you've got a mortgage with an offset account, or in some limited circumstances, potentially using a credit card for the shorter term to make some key purchases. Obviously, if there's unexpected medical appointments or something that are really non-negotiable, you just need to find a way to make the payment.
And then eventually this too shall pass.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
You know, like it's hard for a while, but there will be a light at the other end of the tunnel.
Exactly.
Hopefully you don't find yourself in that situation though. Hopefully you're listening to this podcast, you are considering planning a family and you are going to have everything in place beforehand so you're not in a situation where you feel real financial stress. Well, here's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're on parental leave, superannuation. Is this something that you can just put on ice for a while, or should you be thinking about it from the beginning?
You certainly should be thinking about it from the beginning, Steph. It's certainly a challenge when it comes to superannuation balance. If one partner in a couple has extended time out of the workforce, over 20 to 30 years of money invested in superannuation, it's certainly going to have an effect on their final retirement balance. And what we've seen looking backwards is that's been a greater effect to the female in the household, especially if having multiple children and potentially they're the primary caregiver over an extended period of, say, 5, 10, 15 years.
Where should you start? Should you start by talking to your employer about this? Do you go to HR? What's the beginning?
Yeah, so the key thing is I would understand, the policies and benefits of the company that you work for. A lot of companies, it's at least a minimum of a month's paternity leave with a business. A lot of the big corporates offer up to 6 months. And I know a couple of friends of mine that have taken those benefits and they've had the 6 months out of the workforce to do the paternity leave. So looking there first and foremost in terms of with your employer, benefits and entitlements. In addition, the government has 6 months of paid paternity leave, but on a minimum wage. And there are some means tests around that without getting into that today. So I'd look to your employer first and then look for government support off the back of that as well. There is another piece in time around childcare subsidy as well. So depending on how long out of the workforce or what you want to do with your child or children, whether there's some benefit there as well.
When you're on maternity or paternity leave, does your workplace usually still pay super, or does that change depending on who you're working with?
It largely is dependent upon who you're working with. I am proud to say at Tribeca that we pay ongoing superannuation benefits for people who are on paternity leave, which is fantastic. It really is on a case-by-case basis depending upon your employer.
I reckon it's important to check because a lot of people might assume one thing and it actually be the opposite. And it's always a conversation, I reckon, with your workplace. You might not get what you want, but I think you can always have the conversation.
I agree. And, I'm happy to volunteer here, Steph, that, we have changed our policy in the last 6 months because we had someone go on maternity leave. She read through our policies and procedures and she challenged us on it. So we made the effective change.
Which is good. There's always start of a conversation. If someone ends up being in the situation where the cost of having a child has just been a little bit overwhelming and one parent has maybe been out of the workplace for a while and their superannuation as a result is a little bit lower than the other. This is, we know, a really common story for women. Women have lower superannuation balances than men. Often it's because they've been the one who has spent the time raising the child. Is it important for women to try and bring that superannuation balance back up, to try and do maybe voluntary payments after that?
Yeah, I do think it's important. If we can create some equalisation in a partnered couple around superannuation balances, there's a multitude of strategies on how you can do that. In the short term, both partners are returning to the workforce and being in positive cash flow. There's the ability to do things like make up contributions to superannuation as well. So whilst being in a partnered couple, we look at two superannuation balances as one. Philosophically, equalisation, if at all doable, is important.
It is. It's just so easy to put this sort of stuff on ice. Again, I think especially for women, superannuation is something that can just sort of fall by the wayside, and that's such a shame because it's part of the reason women have small superannuation. So if you have time to think about it, try and factor that in. But if not, we get it. We get it.
Exactly right.
Now, one thing a lot of people don't really know about are education or investment bonds. I'd never heard of this before. Can you take me through what that is?
Yeah. So basically, it's a tax-effective structure where you can put an initial investment and then can continue to make ongoing payments into it. And there's an underlying investment. So it's put into the investment market based on your risk profile. And then if you were to use, say in this instance, an education bonds, you would use the money that's invested to pay for school fees or associated expenses. There's no tax to pay on that as well. So it's a quite effective structure for people, one, to start investing for their children, and two, to pay for school-related expenses in a tax-effective manner.
Do you need a lot of money to start into this, or can you have a small amount?
You can start with small amounts, and that's what often people do. So whether that's from their own savings or whether that's gifted from close family and friends, and then potentially they contribute to it over time, or they just make that one lump sum payment as well at the start.
Well, I mean, we have spoken about previously that it's important if you're investing to have a long-term strategy, and that might actually be a really valuable gift at some point and a really valuable head start for your child.
Yeah, and even discussing this morning with one of our advisors who's recently had a child, and that's one of the key things that he'll do. He'll put some money away at the start, put it into an investment bond in this instance, and then look for it to grow. So once again, teaching your children in the day-to-day about good money habits, but also doing it in a smart and tax-effective manner as well. Win-win.
When should people start thinking about what school they want to send their child to? Is that something that you should be planning in when you're planning for a family?
Yeah, it's a great question, Steph. And again, it probably falls into the sooner rather than later category. Depends where you would like your kids to go to school. So whether that's public or whether that's private. We know the costs associated with private school are about $25,000 to $30,000 a year. So it does add up, and obviously that's after tax as well. So it does cost a lot. So in terms of the family planning piece, if it's public school, for how long? If it's the 13 years, that's great. For some people, it's public school for, say, the first 5, 6, 7 years, and then it's the high school version is private. So the challenge / the opportunities around funding on it as well. So, yeah, it's an interesting discussion.
It's a tough discussion. It's a lot of money.
It really is a lot of money, especially if you have 2, 3 or 4 kids. What we find with some of our clients who potentially are pre-retirees or retirees, so grandparents, we're having living legacy conversations with our clients around potentially can they spend some of their money whilst they're still here, help out their children and their grandchildren at the same time, potentially send them to the school that they'd really like to. They're seeing their money go to good use. That's
a really nice idea, the idea of a living legacy. And I suppose that's another way that you could consider doing that is investing in those investment bonds as well.
Yeah, that's right. And, in terms of the living legacy, so through grandparents to their children and their grandkids it is one of the key strategies, especially if you have 3 or 4 children in a household and you would like them to go to private school. Otherwise, it's very difficult to afford. One of the other strategies we see is that if people have, a home mortgage, that they might go to interest only for a medium to long-term period. So not making any capital repayments on their home loan to just afford from a cash flow point of view to fund that private school.
Which is tricky when you've got, because that's a compromise again. And I know that we talk about what's the life that you want to lead and is that fine?
Financial compromises again, right, Steph?
It is, yeah, or choices as we call them. It's a choice. Right. It's a choice. So you have to choose, I think, whether education is more important than making sure the family home is completely paid off.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And, if it's a partnered couple, they might have a collective view, they might have a singular view. And then with a lot of blended families these days, you've potentially got ex-partners and everyone has different ideas, different thoughts around what they value as well. So it certainly makes for interesting conversation, trying to find goal alignment as well.
It all starts with the conversation though. This is the important thing. We say this a lot, but it all starts at a conversation where you actually have to sit down and think about these things and work out what your thoughts are and what your partner's thoughts are and where you actually want to be sending your time and your energy and what you think is important for actually living the way you want to live.
And it's never about finding the time. It's always about making it. We've all got 168 hours in a week, and you find people who seem to get through a lot of work, whatever it is, or again, they're successful, they make the time. They don't find it, because if we choose to find it, we'll never find it.
I think that if you're having the conversation about whether or not you want to have children, I reckon you're having the conversation about how you're going to afford children. And anyone can make it work if they really want to make it work, but there has to be that first step, because the later you leave it, I think the harder it will be for you and everyone involved.
Oh, no doubt at all. When it comes to a lot of, money conversations or achieving a greater sense of financial well-being, there's no silver bullet. It's about doing the work. So as you said, Steph, whether it's sitting down with a blank page, sorting out your goals, long-term, medium-term and short, that's the way we like to work in that order at Tribeca. And then from that point, creating change and building that financial muscle. That's the key thing. It's probably not what a lot of people want to hear, but there's no silver bullet.
There's nothing that'll make it easy, but it does start a conversation. And I also like the idea of trying to make this a fun conversation. Go and invest the time on having a nice dinner, maybe, and having the conversation if that's what it's going to take to actually do it.
I agree. I think simple things like changing the scenery. So, whether that is a dinner, it's a coffee in another spot, a walk by the beach, somewhere different, just to change the landscape, change the mindset.
Wonderful. There's so much to think about before you're having children, so try to get your finances in line before things get hectic and your sleep goes out the window. Trust us on that one. If you want more money advice, well, then make sure you follow this podcast so you never miss an episode. See you soon. Advice given in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to influence decisions about investing or financial products. Our listeners should always seek their own professional advice that considers their own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.